Good afternoon, friends from India, and we have been joined by panelists from Australia. So, good evening to all the panelists from Australia. Today, we have gathered here for a very important seminar, is of great interest to uh, which is of great interest to everybody who's participated here. But before we start off with the seminar on outsourcing of services to Australia, may I request all to place their hands on their heart for the ICAI motto song.
य एष सुप्तेषु जाग्रति य एष सुप्तेषु जाग्रति कामं 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 कामपुरुषो पुरुषो निर्विमाणः निर्विमाणः तदेव शुक्रं तदेव शुक्रदब्रह्मा तद्ब्रह्मा तदेवामृतमुच्यते तस्मिन् लोकः शतः सर्वे तदूनात्यपि कश्चन एतद्द्वैत 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 एतद्द्वैत.
So, as we know, India has been always a very low cost center for services, and that is why a lot of corporates all over the world has been focusing on India for outsourcing their services. That's where I think this program has great relevance. We chartered accountants sitting in India can serve professionals across the world, service across the world, and for that we today have with us the team from Australia, who will be able to guide us through what are the ways in which we Indian chartered accountants can serve sitting here in India, serve in Australia, either the CPAs or the corporates in Australia. So I think this is a great seminar that we have. I would really like to thank Dinesh ji for putting this up, and Sandeep ji, and I think Leslie, Harish ji, Mr. Martin for joining us, Prasoon ji, who's sitting in Melbourne, and he's joining from Melbourne. So thank you all for joining from there. Now may I request Manish Gadia, Chairman WRC, to please address the session.
Thank you, Doshi Madam. Good evening to all the panelists. Why I am saying good evening? Because all the panelists are sitting in Australia, and at that time, this is the evening time there. And good afternoon to all the participants. It's really a great thing that we today discussing the outsourcing opportunity at Australia. But apart from outsourcing opportunity, we have Louis with us that who has helped us to sign MRA with Australia CPA. So something about that also he's going to share with us during the session. And what are the tie-up and what are the kind of different services we can provide, that what we are going to discuss today. And we have a fantastic panelist. All panelists are from Australia. Martin, Harish, Louis, Sandeep, Prasoon. So we are going to have a fantastic session. I will not take much of your time and directly request Dosti Madam to take it forward.
Thank you, Maniji. Now may I request Dinesh ji to introduce the moderator for the session and take it forward.
Thank you, Drishti. It gives me great pleasure introducing Mr. Sandeep Khurana, who's the moderator for today's event. Sandeep is a strategy, market development, and transformation professional from Melbourne. He is a Bachelor of Economics and postgraduate in computing. Sandeep has been sponsored for an MBA in Melbourne by the Ford and a global leadership program at INSEAD in Singapore. He has deep experience building and executing strategy and transformation projects in the financial services industries across Australia, India, and Asia Pacific. He also has expertise in new market developments for enterprises, startups, and incubators. Sandeep was responsible for the India market entry strategy for the tax and accounting business of Thomson Reuters, including its acquisition of FastFax. With this brief introduction, I welcome Sandeep, and I would like him to start the session. Thank you, Sandeep.
Thank you, Dinesh Ji, and to the WIRC for that kind introduction. Namaste and greetings to my fellow Indians from the WIRC. I hope that you and your families are keeping safe and well. My fellow panelists and I are very thankful for this opportunity to discuss collaboration between India and Australia. The topic today will be discussing outsourcing. I will now start with the introduction of my fellow panelists and also the agenda. I'll just start to share my screen. So hopefully everyone can now see my screen. And my first introduction will be to, from CPA Australia, will be Leslie Leow. Leslie Leow is the General Manager of Emerging Markets at CPA Australia. He's been with the CPA Australia for the last 4.5 years, currently based out of Singapore. Leslie has several qualifications in civil engineering, accounting, and business management. He's a seasoned executive with a 22-year record of achieving, developing, and directing strategic regional sales and marketing initiatives in ever-changing dynamic environments. He's an intuitive leader with acute business acumen and with a solid history of success. Leslie's core area of expertise are strategic market planning, business development, profit optimization, and process improvement. And today, Leslie will be talking about the mutual recognition agreement between the ICAI and CPA Australia, and also opportunities for education and collaboration between the WIRC and CPA Australia. So thank you for that, Leslie, and welcome to the panel. The second introduction that I'd like to do for my fellow panelists is Martin Artenstein. So Martin is the Treasurer of the Australia-India Chamber of Commerce. Martin is a Chartered Accountant Fellow. He also has a Bachelor of Commerce and is a registered SMSF Auditor. He's the National Treasurer of the Australia-India Chamber of Commerce since March 2019 and has a long association and friendship with India, which he'll talk about. Martin has been a partner or director of his own firm, including Morris, Cohen, Glen & Co. since the early 1990s, and also has been working previously for several years at 2 international firms. He has clients in IT and emerging technologies, media, the arts, communications, and privately owned businesses in general. He specializes in establishing and helping subsidiaries of foreign corporations to set up in Australia. When he can, Martin travels extensively to keep up to date with international trends and to consult with clients. And today, Martin will be talking from the basis of the Australia-India Chamber of Commerce, the landscape and trends in the Australia-India strategy, strong cultural links as a strength defining the relationship, and general trends, opportunities around outsourcing, and how it's changing, including under the pandemic. So thank you, Martin, for joining us. With Martin, I now have pleasure to introduce CA Harish Budhiraja, who is a partner of Morris, Cohen, Glen & Co., a leading chartered accounting firm in Melbourne. Harish is a chartered accountant, a registered company auditor, a registered SMSF auditor, and certified Xero advisor. He also has a Bachelor of Laws and Masters of Commerce degrees. Harish was appointed as a director of the firm in July 2010, and he's an experienced professional who has worked in a number of chartered accounting practices both in Australia and India, with a focus on audit and consulting services. In his present role in the firm, he's responsible for the audit and assurance assignments covering trade and manufacturing, foreign controlled entities, associations, trusts, and government-funded organizations. So Harish uses his global experience to assist international clients in setting up their businesses in Australia and educating their staff on various legal and compliance issues. And Harish was responsible for setting up the outsourcing function for his firm, and he'll be talking about how he did that and the due diligence they looked at for finding a partner. He'll be talking, amongst other things, the processes and activities and tasks that are looked at for outsourcing in the beginning and how it's changed, challenges and how they're overcome, and also, very importantly, in this day and age, about the technologies which are required to be learned, such as MYOB, Xero, and others. So thank you, Harish, for joining us. And we now have Prasoon Veerath. Prasoon is the Group Director of Carisma Solutions, a leading outsourcing business working with accounting firms in Australia, such as the firm that we talked about, Morris Cohen, Glen & Co. He's a member of CPA Australia and the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants. He's a faculty member of the Institute of Public Accountants of Australia and the Institute of Cost Accountants of India. He has over 14 years of experience in leading teams, building new services and delivering accounting services to Australia. He heads Carisma's Australia and New Zealand business, and he's based in Melbourne as well. Prasoon will be talking about Carisma, the background, successes and history. He'll be also talking about the journey as an outsourcing partner to Australian accounting firms, which services are outsourced. He'll be talking about some use cases, training and upskilling, and that's required from the outsourcing, as well as security and privacy laws and requirements in Australia, which are quite strict. So thank you, Prasoon. I really appreciate you being here as part of the panel. At the end of the session, we'll be going through a Q&A and we'll be welcoming people to put in the chat their questions. And then at the end, we'll be going through the Q&A before final remarks and close from the chairman. So that is the agenda today. So thank you, everyone. I'll now actually pass it to CPA Australia to actually talk about their session. So I will now stop sharing, now allow the next session, which is the how to become a CPA. And if Lewis, you could please present now. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandeep. Namaste. First of all, I'd like to thank the presidents of ICAI, Mr. Neha, and the chairman of WRIC, CA Manish, for welcoming us to join the sessions. In fact, we do have a very special relationship with WRIC. In 2019, our CEO, Andrew Hunter, and our general manager, Executive General Manager, Deborah Leong, visited the ICAI regional office in Mumbai, located at BKC. It's a very nice place and we have a good time over there. So the memories flow back again. So next slide. And,
that's your photo? Yeah.
Yeah, change a bit. Right, there's a slide.
Yeah.
All right, today's sharing will be, hopefully we can give you some insights, and we also want to rejoice the bond that we have with ICAI. Recently, we just renewed our third time running the pathway for members of ICAI to become CPA Australia members under the current mutual agreement. And I'm going to give you a flavor about what will be the opportunities for education and collaboration between these two bodies in terms of what a special relationship that we have. Next slide. So just an intro, who is CPA Australia? We are one of the world's largest accounting body, same as ICAI. We have about 168,000 members across 100 countries. Currently, we have more than 25,000 members into senior leadership positions, mainly into C-suite level, CEOs, CFOs. In fact, we also have chief technological officers as part of our members. And this year, in fact, is our 135 years of operations. Next slide. Now, when we talk about mutual agreement, it's built on the basis to bring network together, to get globally connected with one another across the globe. You know, the world is getting a more dynamic place. There's huge opportunities around, even in the presence of most of us are working from home, but we get connected internationally. So this is our global network that shows you our presence. Currently, we are heavily into Asia Pacific. We started in Australia. We are one of the oldest and the largest accounting group in Australia. We have about 120,000 members in Oceania regions, consists of Australia, New Zealand, and the Pacific Islands. And from where I'm located in Singapore, Southeast Asia, in fact, Singapore was the first office set up by CPA Australia 65 years ago under the invitations of the Singapore government. So we actually contribute to the transformations from a tiny island or fishing village to a global financial hub players. So we have about 20,000 members in Southeast Asia. We continue to grow our presence in China, mainland China, Hong Kong, and Taiwan. So we have about 20,000 over members over there. And I'm proud, and because of the agreements that we have with ICAI, since 2009, we have actually have about 1,200 members located in India. Of course, some of the members, a few hundreds over, actually migrated to Australia. And if you look at America, we have about 1,200 over members, as well as 1,000 over in Europe. So the strength of the MRA brings that is global connectivity. So you can reach out to any members of us across the group, over 100 countries, and get connected with one another. Of course, we do recognize by multinational companies. We have about 400 plus recognized employees that recognize the destinations of the CPA. Next slide. So why become a CPA via the MRA route? In fact, this MRA is the shortest span of time to complete and earn international recognized destinations. Because of the arrangement, later I'll share with you the details of the arrangement. CAs can actually obtain a CPA status within a short span of time, 6 months. Yes, you hear me correctly, within 6 months, right? So this is actually a very fast track pathway that your central committee and your past, immediate, and current presidents have valued and worked hard for maintaining this special relationship. And immediately, as I mentioned, that you join a robust network of 166,000 members across the group, it immediately enhance your brand, because the moment you join under this pathway, you already get a status. It's called the associate membership. So we call it the ASA destination. And this is the official destination as well, that you can put it into your LinkedIn and into your personal profile of CVs, things like that. The other thing is that when you get connected overseas, like for example, you go to Australia, New Zealand, or even Singapore, sometimes we see our members, it's good to have 2 letter of good standing issued by 2 professional bodies. So you can get a letter of good standing issued by your ICAI, right? Because in this part of the world, we know how the quality of CA accountants are. At the same time, you get a strategic aspect that a letter of good standing is issued by CPA Australia. So that is enhances your value, right? Next slides. Now, we are proud to share this. In fact, last month, we have a 3rd time running renewal of our MRA. In fact, it started in 2009. It's already a decade, and together we have fostered a more robust international partnership for the accountants and the business committee. I would also like to compliment ICAI that, of the leaderships, the past, immediate, and the current presidents and the central committee's members. I will say that they are visionary. They foresee ahead that, bring CAs to international. That's why we are doing this engagement today on outsourcing. So no one will think about in 2009, you can do your own business across the globe just by internet, right? So today, this is what's happening. So next slide will share you the details. So why I say as fast track within 6 months, you can do once you submit the documentations, under the MRA route, immediately you become associate member with us. And what you need to do is one of the examinations paper, which is called the Global Strategy and Leaderships. So a CA actually get exempted 5 subjects and only need to do 1 exam paper with us, which is the Global Strategy and Leaderships. And the other one will be the CPA CPD module. In your CA aspect, you call it CPE. It's an online learning module. And after that, you can attain your CPA status. So this can be complete within 6 months, because we have 2 enrollments period a year. The next exams will be in October, the following will be in April. So while you are waiting for the semester to start, you can start to do your CPE requirement. And after that, when the enrollment starts, within 4 months, you do your self-learning and you sit for exams online and you passes it and you advance to CPA status. We actually are the few accounting body that bring the exam center at a convenience at your home. Because of COVID, we implement the online proctoring exams. You do not need to visit physical exam center. You can do online examinations at a convenience of your workplace or your home with some system requirement being met. Okay, next slide. Now, why need to do this global strategy and leaderships? Because when we do the MRA, in fact, we have mapped out the syllabus, and we found that CA syllabus tend to have a very high quality in accounting aspect and technical aspect. But we want to give them a flavor of the global business environment and the global strategies. So how a CA can enhance the learning and immediately come to getting a global business, will be looking at leaderships, understanding leadership concept of the use of real-world examples and strategic thinking as well, using business information for decision making and analyze external and internal operating environment, as this is very critical these days because of the competitions and the change in the business environment, and using models to measure performance of the organization. Therefore, we want to help the accountants to understand how to implement strategies in the accounting aspect. Next slide. Now, the better practice in governance and accountabilities is a CPE learning that you can do any time of the year. So you just go online and subscribe the product and start the learning. It's not an exam based, it's just a three exams, assessment attempts, a simple test, you can do it. And if you fail one time, you can go back and do it again. You have maximum 3 tries, and you can always refer to the materials. Next slide. Now, some requirements need to take note. You need to be a good member of ICAI in order to under this route. So make sure you pay your membership, you fulfill a CPE requirement before you come to us. Right? We are very strict on that because we hold the integrity of the agreement. You get a letter of good standing from your institutes, and you do not gain entry from ICAI through another mutual agreement. All right, you can't write another agreement to another agreement, and you have to be successfully completed the ICAI exams, the practical. You call it articulation requirements, and either you hold a university degree that is recognized by us, or at least 5 years of work experience in professional accounting. So these 5 years of work experience usually applies to those who have done through the foundation route. We also recognize that. Next slide. Now, just a snapshot of our members in India. I told you that we have about 1,200 members. Even in India, our members are actually able to find a good career and into diverse roles. So you can see some of the our Indian members are into multinational companies, and even if you are from Mumbai, the CEO of Mumbai International Airport is actually our members as well. Next slide. Now, as I mentioned, that we continue to grow our presence, of course, in Australia, by and large, big companies and even the government sector do recognize as the destinations, and also do value our members of working with them. So we do have this scheme called the Recognized Employer Partnerships that we provide learning and development with our employers partners. Next slide. Now, just since we are on this outsourcing topic, I also want to share with you is that, CPA Australia is also one of the licensure issuer for public practice in Australia and New Zealand. And if you are CA, gone through CPA Australia via the MRA route, you can actually apply a public practice license. Of course, there's some further requirement being met. You need to know the Australian taxations. You need to, that one you can take the subjects with us. You need to know the Australian company law. And after that, you have to go through the public practice program that is conducted by us, right? In Australia, the structure is a bit different. It doesn't mean that, once you become an accountant, immediately you can practice. You still have to go through another module. We do the public practice, right? This further information, we can always contact my team members. We're happy to share with you further. Next slide. So we support our members in an entire way. We constantly evaluate and find new resources to get our members, sharpen their skills and get their best foothold in the international aspect. So we have a few areas like career insight tools to help younger members to look at what is the next role to be. Like for example, forensic accountants, what are the skills level they required in order to train themselves up. And we have continuous professional development products that is constantly giving complimentary to members to sharpen their skills. And we have a money e-publications called In the Black to talk about latest topics. If you do not require to become a member, just go through our website. We have a few range of resources and templates that do apply even in the public practice area. I think the most important is the networking opportunities, right? In terms of COVID, we have shift from the physical networking opportunities to an online platform. It's called the CPA Connect, where globally members can come into this online virtual world and connect with one another and find business opportunities. Okay, next slide. So next year will be interesting. Next year, Mumbai and ICAI is holding the World Congress, WACOA. So we are actually one of the last round is run by us and CAANZ. Starting from actually early this year, we have dialogues with ICAI about sharing our best practice experience with them on how to organize WACOA. And we're really excited about this, and we are very happy and pleased to see that ICAI actually taking the lead and holding the next Olympic Games for the accountants. So there's a few opportunities for education and collaboration between these two institutes. Next slide. So table is being discussed, and all along I also emphasize that, you know, how can we value add? I think because of the MRA, we can value add from new generation of accountants to help them to upskill, right, to the new roles, from a single to multiple disciplinary roles, such as we see a fair bit of this world that auditors are changing to become business advisors, data scientists, outsourcing CFO functions and accounting services, and even in Hong Kong, there will be our members are getting out in the fintech tax experts, right? We see there's a change in the career path, and this is something that we would like to work with ICAI on further research on it in looking at, you know, different career path for new generations of accountants. And very soon I will reach out to them to have maybe explore joint publication in this aspect. Now, I think more relevant for today will be the new business model, right? We are reaching out to ICAI as well to share, you know, what will be the best practices templates, because, you know, incorporating advisory mindset is more key important these days for small, medium practitioner. Very large, you know, it's the same as in Singapore and even in Australia. Traditionally, we are just audit experts or tax experts, but we see a shift right now. If you want to get a high value work, you want to have you want to stay out, or you want to stay ahead of the competitions, and you do not want to restrict to certain fees collected, right? Sustainability is a key factor. So one of the ways is do better business, outsource out. So like what happened in Australia, I think my key fellow panelists will share with you. Australia firms are starting to look at, you know, streamlining existing low value works to others, right? Because of the huge labor cost, and outsourcing in develop high value works. This is something that you, my fellow panelists will share with you further. Next slide. So do watch out in this space. I think there are more to come. Probably we'll also like to work with WRC is you know, in future collaboration on speaking events. We can get top leaderships globally or even in Asia Pac to talk about certain industry trends, such as one we have done is Asian economics in Byron Island area. We actually invited Reliance Joe CFO to talk about in the India aspect. Next slide. So we are also formulating more CPE programs to share with ICAI members as well in the future, looking into more doing global business, strategy and leaderships, or into technical areas. Okay, next slide. So do feel free to go into our website. Sometimes you get resources like, you know, into preparing your firms for the future. There's some templates over there. I will encourage you to take a look at on the free resources that we have. Next slide. Okay, this will be the last slide. You know, if you are interested to find out more on the details of the MRA, because the documentations are very strict, we are very strict on that to make sure that, you know, we follow what is being laid out on the agreement. Feel free to reach out to us. We have an Indian representative team based in Delhi. Preeti and Babita, they will be happy to assist you. Right. Thank you very much. Back to you, Sandeep.
Thank you, Leslie, for that fantastic discussion and the presentation. What I might do is I might actually throw it to the panel and actually ask the panel to make any comments before the next presentation from Martin. Before I do that, I actually have a question and just a comment, and that was the diagram or the image you showed about 1,200 CPAs for South Asia, for India, and over 20,000 in East Asia. I find that quite significant difference. Can you just give any, I guess, explanations around that? Because one thing that I've also learned is that the more CAs and CPAs and accountants there are, which are supporting trade and investment, the greater growth in trade and investment between different countries actually occurs. And so I'd just be interested in your thoughts and the panel's thoughts as well.
Yep, Sandeep, you are absolutely right. You know, in Southeast Asia, because of our members network, that boosts a lot of trade between Southeast Asia and China. Actually, accountants are great ambassador in business, right? Because you probably will evolve in the local tax knowledge, and you will probably will involve with merger and acquisitions and investments regulatory requirements. So the reason why we grow in Southeast Asia from a tiny fishing village of 3 members in Singapore, grow over 20,000 and spread across the ASEAN countries is because of network. So it started from Singapore, but you know, Singapore is very near to neighboring countries, Malaysia, and the members actually go over there and preach. And it's also very near over across the street is Indonesia. So they also reach out to Indonesia. So in fact, we have eventually we open up branches because of the trade demand. We open up offices in Malaysia, Singapore, and even North and South Vietnam. We see, interestingly, we see a growing number of Indians in Vietnam, and they have actually visited our offices as well, and also take part in the networking events. So my encouragement and my vision is to see that, you know, we hope that the bond will continue to strengthen. In fact, it will, and we want to bring more Indians, you know, to get connected to overseas businesses. And let me tell you this. Whenever in Singapore or in Australia, whenever I travel and I speak to my members that overseas, you know, I always say that, you know, I'm a half Indians, because I want to tell them the Indians opportunities, and they got really excited about it. But the myth is that, you know, India is always challenging to get information. But I think because of this MRA and because the bond that we have, we should be the ambassador to properly communicate, you know, the informations to the business community, and they have the confidence to invest. I started to see that because Singapore members are connecting to my Indian members, which is also a CA, to talk about investment. Yeah.
Thank you, Leslie. That's fantastic. Any other comments before I go to Martin? Okay, so what I'll do then is just directly go ahead.
Sandeep, sorry. Leslie, the MRA agreement is relatively new. Are you nevertheless, are you already seeing applications flowing in respect of that agreement?
Yes, we see a high interest on the applications. That's where the 1,002 has built up. We also seeing that increased interest of looking into Australia, especially as an outsourcing.
Thank you.
I have a quick question, Leslie, for you. You mentioned that for obtaining the certificate of practice, members need 3 years practical experience. I know some members are experienced members or senior members, but there might be some youngsters or young members who want to be member of CPA. How they cross that line?
Yeah, I have good news for all our CA friends. because when we look at your practical, your articleships, it's tough, man. I understand that, you know, they go to, at the final level, they go to school at 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. Then they go to serve the firm until 5, 6 p.m. Then they go back for night class. We totally respect that. That's why once they become a CA, it's very highly qualified. They do not require to meet our practical experience. They go straight. So we already recognize their 3 years of articleship.
Fantastic. Okay, what I might now do, thank you, Leslie, for that. And I'm sure there'll be lots of Q&A. So please do put your questions into the chat. And at the end of the session, we'll be answering the audience questions as well. I'm now going to pass it across to my next panelist, who is Martin Artenstein. And he'll be talking about the Australia-India relationship in more detail. So across to you, Martin.
Thank you very much, Sandeep. And thank you again, Leslie, for your interesting presentation. First of all, namaste to all of our attendees. I know there are many of you out there, and thank you for taking the time to attend. Thanks also to CA Manish for the invitation to talk today, and especially to CA Dinesh, who's been very helpful in setting up today's session. First of all, I declare a love of India, and having visited, I think it's 5 times now over the years. Getting to know the place and traveled extensively, and every time I travel for work, I have the right recipe, which is 4 or 5 days of work and 3 weeks of holiday. That works for me. And certainly any Australians who go that way, I always encourage to add on a substantial holiday to see what there is in India. Very diverse, and love going. So with that in mind, I'm very keen to conduct as much two-way trade between Australia and India as possible, not the least of which because it's an excuse to visit India. So hence my interest in Indian business. My firm has been doing business with Indian firms for 20 years or so now, some of the largest firms, and you'll hear more about that in an upcoming presentation today. So the Australia-India Chamber of Commerce, what is it? It's a body that's been set up, a not-for-profit body that was set up and approved by the federal government by an act of parliament and signed off by our national treasurer, Josh Frydenberg. The date of the two-way trade facilitation, which has led to the Australia-India Chamber of Commerce, and the sister organisation based in India, which is the Indo-Australian Chamber of Commerce, goes back to the 1980s, when Australian PM Bob Hawke and Indian PM of the time, Rajiv Gandhi, decided that it would be a very good idea to set up two-way trade. Now, bear in mind, in the 80s, two-way trade between our countries was actually quite small, substantially less than between Australia and New Zealand, for example. That has grown dramatically, such that now India represents Australia's 7th largest market for two-way trade. Australia is sending boatloads of raw materials, of technical products, and of services. Education is a big export. And in the other direction, India is sending clothing and food and engineering products and IT services and outsourcing services, for example. This has now assumed very high importance between the two governments. So in 2018, the then Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull, engaged a former High Commissioner, Mr. Peter Varghese, to produce a report going out for the next 15 or so years, and directing Australian companies to look at India as an export market, as an import market, and identifying which places would be the targets. So which products, which states to start in, where the easiest ways to enter might be. Your Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, engaged with Anil Wadhwa to do a similar report in the other direction, how to engage in trade between Australia and India from an Indian perspective. And if you haven't already seen that report, I would suggest that it'd be a good idea to go and look at it, to give us some insights about what industries and what ways to engage with Australia. I know many of you are engaged in or wanting to engage in outsourcing, but many of you, as identified by our previous speaker, might be CEOs, CFOs, COOs, or might be in the future and so companies that you work for might be wanting to enter Australia. And so, you know, insourcing might be an appropriate thing to look at. And again, one of the other speakers will be touching on that, I'm sure. The two governments are talking about something resembling a free trade agreement. Australia already has multiple free trade agreements with many countries, including ASEAN, and would love to have one with India. So they're talking about a CECA, which is another word for a free trade agreement, and hopefully that will come to pass sometime soon. I'm older than probably most of our attendees, and I can tell you 30 years ago, to see an Indian face on the street in Australia was not common at all. In fact, it was, you know, quite uncommon. Nowadays, that's changed. There are 700,000 people in Australia who identify as having an Indian heritage, perhaps born in India, or maybe their parents are born in India. Every local shopping complex has multiple Indian cafes or grocery stores. Pre-pandemic, and maybe even today, there's approximately 100,000 students from India studying here on the ground, and that's one of the largest countries in the world for accepting Indian students. All of that is leading to opportunities. The opportunities are there, they're growing, they're being facilitated by the governments of Australia and India, organisations like the CPA, organisations such as the Indo-Australian Chamber, and indeed the Australia-India Chamber of Commerce. And I'd invite you to engage with us. So the opportunities are for you and for business and for perhaps your business. Okay, so that's the background. Next slide, please. Put all this in perspective. Australia is a very large country. India is a huge country, but you know, you're talking about a country like India, diverse as it is less than half the size of continental Australia. Australia is geographically about the size of China or continental USA. From one side to the other is enormous. So Perth to Sydney going west to east is about 4,000 kilometres. If you travel 4,000 kilometres from Mumbai, you'd be in Singapore, just to give you some idea about how far this is. Okay, next slide, please. That's the MCG in the picture, so there's a cricket flavour there for you. Now, Australia is relatively small in population, geographically large, but small in population, about the population of less than Delhi anyway. Nevertheless, it's the world's 12th largest economy and is growing. So pre-pandemic, Australia had 27 years in a row of positive growth. I think it's the only country in the world and possibly in history that has had no recession for such a long period of time. GDP in Australia is one of the largest, in fact, 10th largest in the world, and again growing. In terms of doing business here, you'll find a stable political environment. The legal systems have a base in the British system, so you'll quite understand Australian laws if you have any insight into Indian laws. The economy is quite transparent, a very low level and maybe no level of corruption. It's a nice place to do business and a nice place to live. Where I live in Melbourne, 7 years running, it was rated the most livable city. So a nice place to live. In terms of the standard of living in Australia, worldwide, second highest in the world, and the third highest per capita in terms of wealth, behind Switzerland, and I think it's one of the Scandinavian countries is second. Okay, next slide, please. Australia is one of only 8 countries in the world that have a AAA credit rating. So institutions here are incredibly unlikely to be going broke. So you're dealing with companies that are stable, growing, economically sound, and can pay your bills. In terms of doing business here, Australia's been assessed as the 5th freest economy and the 7th easiest place in the world to open a business. And importantly, 100% foreign ownership is allowed. And if you want to repatriate the profits or your capital back home, very easy to do so. Foreign exchange controls are minimal. You'd have to be investing a massive amount of money before you would need Reserve Bank approval. Migrants are coming from all over the place. If you walk around town, you'll see Indian faces, you'll see Chinese faces, you'll see faces of every kind. So 200 countries represented. 35% of the population has come from somewhere else. My own firm is relatively small, and yet we have people from, I think it's about 18 countries out of 30 people working there. And in fact, something like 20% of the population speak a language other than English on a daily basis. Next slide, please. Okay, if you are going to be doing business with Australians, it might help to get an understanding of some of the culture. So people work hard, but they don't like to work too hard. They like to have a good work-life balance. So, you know, playing cricket of an evening, going to the beach is important, having a barbecue and mixing with friends is really important. Having said that, when they are working, they're quite strict about standards. And one of those, for example, is punctuality. If you have a meeting at 9 a.m., it means be there at 9 a.m., not 9:15. They like a straight answer. Australians are straight shooters. So, you know, don't say yes to be polite, and they won't be offended if you say no. They're quite happy to come to the point about business. Don't beat around the bush, as we say. If there's things to be said, say it. They won't be offended. You don't need to come armed with mountains of gifts. You know, whilst it's appreciated, it's not important. And in fact, you know, be careful with the amount of gifts you do give, because they won't be swayed by, you know, as I say, corruption. Quick decisions are made. So if you have a business proposal, you can expect an answer relatively quickly. So it's appropriate to say, here's my proposal, when do you expect to get back to me? And they will do so. Okay, next slide, please. So all of this opens opportunities. Australians with that background, with that culture, with the history of dealing with people overseas, where the economy is open, free trade agreements, the Australian dollar has been floated for many years, and therefore two-way trade is very important. We don't actually manufacture much anymore, and so again, dealing with places is important. And over the last few years, much of the production that is sold in Australia has come from China. Because of political reasons and other reasons, the focus is now going to be away from China. India is seen as a not only acceptable, but as an attractive destination to invest in. It's an attractive destination to source materials and services, because China is becoming much, much less so than it has been in the past. Nextly, cybersecurity is of course a concern, and you know, we all read on a daily basis about hacking and so on, but the source of that tends to be places like China and Russia. So dealing with India is becoming more and more attractive. And of course, the technical ability of places like India is growing. VPNs are predominant, cloud technology is growing, artificial intelligence, robotics, all of that. And these are things that India is expert in. Couple that with the fact that migration is important to India, but right at the moment, migration is zero. Our borders are closed. They're likely to remain closed for, who knows, 12 months, maybe, 18 months, maybe. No tourists are coming, no migrants are coming. On top of that, the economy is growing again, and growing quite fast. So we've rebounded very quickly out of the worst of the pandemic. And there are quite large staff shortages in Australia. So in every industry, and especially in accounting. So there's a real opportunity for Indian CA firms to be doing work in Australia, holding out hands with Australian CA firms, whether it's outsourcing or something else, dealing with Australian companies. The door is open, and we would welcome you. On top of that, there's an enormous cost imbalance. Wages in Australia are substantially higher than wages in India, and that's also true of professional services and also true of accountants. So again, you'll be cost effective if you're doing business with Australia. In the past, again, Australians have tended not to view product or services outside of their borders, and especially out of Australia and into Asia. They view that with skepticism. The reality, of course, is that now outsourcing out of places like India is now becoming quite common. Large companies have been dealing with Indian outsourcers for quite a number of years, and now smaller companies are as well. And so the perception of quality is now there. They now view the services of outsourcers as being high quality, and that's being demonstrated repeatedly. So at least that's no longer a hurdle that was once there. And finally, in this day and age, we're in the situation where working from home, because of the pandemic, is becoming predominant. So we're all working from home right now. And of course, those who are your target markets are saying, well, we've got cost problems, we've got staff shortage problems, we've got getting into the office is a problem, our staff have to work from home, and whether they're working from home in suburban Melbourne, Sydney, Perth or Brisbane, or working from home in Mumbai or Bangalore shouldn't make any difference. The technology is there, the opportunity is there, and I would suggest that all of you should be looking at doing work with Australia and into Australia, because effectively you'll be working from home or your home office, which is somewhere other than Australia. Okay, next slide, please.
Oh, that's it.
Right. So in a nutshell, I would invite you to do work with Australia, hold out your hands with Australians, and you will benefit, and importantly, so will we. It's a win-win. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. That's very insightful, and what you've mentioned there about the strength of the Australia-India relationship, and on trade, and also in terms of culture. There's a lot of synergies there, and it's growing. A lot more Indians have migrated to Australia, and there's also a redirection of strategic ties between both the Australian and Indian governments to work more closely together. The other component which I'd like to comment on was this last slide in particular, which talks about the fact that the pandemic has actually caused opportunities from working from home, and so that actually throws a lot of outsourcing potential to India as well. And so particularly not only with the cost imbalances, which have always been there, but the fact that as companies in Australia are looking to streamline their costs, the attraction to actually outsource to India might actually become more attractive as well. So thank you, Martin. Anyone else would like to make any comments? Yeah.
Sorry, one last comment that's just occurred to me, Sandeep. The other opportunity is the vast majority of business into Australia will be on the eastern seaboard, so Melbourne, Canberra, Sydney, Brisbane, and there's a 4.5-hour time difference from India to that part of the world. And so quite often that time difference is seen as useful, because it means that when we go to sleep, you guys are still working. And that means when we come back to work in the morning, there's a whole body of work that's been done while we've been sleeping. And so, that's another feature that's really important.
Correct, and don't forget also the western part and the central parts as well. So you mentioned about Adelaide being, Melbourne being the #1 livable city in the world, but in 2021, Adelaide became #1. So just thought we'd mention about Adelaide here as well.
It's remaining in the family. And there's one other feature that I should have mentioned that has also occurred to me that is very attractive in terms of outsourcing, and that's scalability. So that our firms may engage with 1 or 2 CAs in India, and if they like the experience, then that 1 or 2 becomes 3 or 4 or 10. And that scalability relatively easier in India than it is in Australia.
Fantastic. That's an excellent comment. Thank you for that. Does anyone else have any comments before I move to Harish? Okay. All right. So fantastic. Thank you, Martin. I'll now move to the next slide. And I'll be introducing Harish. So Harish is the director and partner at Morris Cohen, Glen & Co. And over to you, Harish. But just before I do that, again, make sure that everyone who's participating, please do put your questions in the chat, and we'll be getting to them at the end of the session. Over to you, Harish.
Thank you. Namaste and good evening to everyone. My name is Harish Budhiraja, and I am a partner cum director in this company called Morris Cohen Glen since 2010. So when I became partner, next slide please, Sandeep. So it's a typical chartered accountancy firm which was started by Morris Cohen and Neil Glen. So that's why we got the name Morris Cohen Glen. So it's a typical chartered accountancy firm. We do taxation, payroll, corporate secretarial, and international taxation services. So when I became partner, the first challenge was the systems were missing, or there were multiple systems and multiple people doing multiple things. So the biggest challenge was how we can streamline everything so that the efficiencies are there and efficiencies of scale are there, and there is a system which people can follow, checklist people can follow, and we can do the standardized work. So as Martin mentioned about cost, but at that stage, cost was not one of the considerations. For us, the biggest consideration was security of the data. So considering I'm from India, I did a personal visit to India to our preferred provider's office. And what are the things we looked at? The next slide, please. So as I said, in this company, multiple systems were there. So people were doing their jobs on before the cloud stage. So the staff was doing jobs on their Excel sheets, on their Word documents, BGL, some of the parts, some part on the solution 6. So it was on scattered way on the different systems, and the reports were lately means collated, and it was hard to train everyone. So we thought, okay, why not we have one specialized division, and we will start with the first activity. So we picked self-managed super fund. It's more like a pension fund of India, but that gives like a facility to the members to run that. Next, please. So once we know, okay, we are going for this outsourcing model. So the first thing was, where should we go and whom should we speak with? So the first thing which was very important for me was credibility of the provider. So when I was going through the preferred providers, one of the providers was a chartered accountant in India. So that gave me a little bit of an extra comfort that I'm dealing with the chartered accountant. The background, I'm also Indian chartered accountant. I migrated to Australia, did my Australian chartered accountancy here. So for me, I knew about the integrity of Indian CAs, about the experience and technical knowledge of the Indian CAs. So my first preference was, if we are going to pick any provider, how their credibility is in India. So the firm we picked is a chartered accountancy firm, but they have an arm or outsourcing arm. So when you're talking with like the like-minded people, like the chartered accountants, it's very easy to understand and exchange the concern and resolve the issues. So when I visited there, first thing was to check their systems and security, like what are the internet speed they are using, what are the controls like application controls or physical controls or data security, where their servers are, how the information is saved, how the information is exchanged. So I did like my own due diligence and presented the report to the other partners, and we ended up picking our preferred provider. Now, another thing is, as I mentioned, not only the firm, I was also keen to check what are the staff members working there, like their experience, their background, and how the data is managed, how the data is handled. Do they have long-standing employees or not? How is the turnover like? And we have our own local legislation, which is Australian APES GN 30. So this talks about some guidance, which are the things we should be following. Obviously, this due diligence, but on top of that, we have to mention these things in our engagement letters, on our publications, on our websites. So the whole process was followed at that time. I'm talking about 2010 here. So it was way before others started using that. Next slide, please. So as I said, at present, we are only using self-managed super funds. All our self-managed super funds are done by the outsourcing partner. Then recently we have requirements about the bookkeeping. You all must be trained on Tally during your articleship or during your trainings. So once you learn one accounting software, pretty much all of them are similar. I had on the job training pretty much all the softwares I use, either it's Mayo or Tally or Xero or NetSuite or Pronto. So we use handful. So bookkeeping was another area we started. So in that sense, if you start training the right people, even in your outsourced arm, that reap results in the future. It means in this sense, I thought rather than having casual employees there, now we have our own dedicated employees in that office. So I know if I'm dealing with a dedicated person, I can train that person the way we want the things to be done. And that person is communicating and dealing with me directly or my team directly. So in that case, we can control not only on the work, but also on the professional development of that person as well. So now lately we have started accounting and tax as well. So accounting and tax, when I say, obviously, when you lodge the tax returns here, you need your registered tax agent registration. So we give our work to our team over there. So they do the work, we review, we give them comments, we give them feedback, but the final lodgement and review is done by us. Even each and every job in our office is reviewed by the partner, even if it's an individual tax return, like a small tax return, because of the very strict controls in Australia around the professionals. We have also used outsourcing people for financial planning. When I say financial planning, it could be very simple tasks like if someone wants mortgage and running his mortgage practice, they can ask the outsourced staff to follow up on the outstanding work papers, giving call to the bankers and others. So that's, I can see, is another area people are using, and we have used that as well. Future, I'm considering few other things which I think there are some administrative areas of the practice or challenging areas of the practice where I can see a little bit of scope there. When we say corporate secretarial, it's pretty much similar to India, like we report to Registrar of Companies in India, and we have Australian Securities and Investments Commission here. So most of the documents nowadays are cloud-based, and most of the forms are done electronically. And if I have someone sitting overseas and helping me, let's say in our office, if I give you a rough number, we have around 600 to 700 companies in our office which are registered with us. So those 600 or 700 companies, we need to send them annual review on their anniversary. So throughout the year, the annual reviews are going. We have to collect the fee. We have to update the directors or members or share capital. So it's ongoing activity, and it's not that technical as such. So it's more like labor oriented, you know. So if we have any resource in India or somewhere, we can use that. Then some of the areas, because people always think, okay, there is a low-end work which can go overseas and can be outsourced. I'm not of that opinion, because sometimes if you don't have any expertise, you can ask your outsourcing partner, oh, have you gone through this kind of a problem before? They might have someone in their team who's expert in that. I have a French client and we were having a similar issue. They need reports to be generated in a way so that they can input into their French system. Obviously, language is one barrier, but the other thing was they need in a specific format. So I spoke with my provider and I said, okay, this is the software I'm using in Australia, but this is the final outcome we need. So I had a few discussions with their accounting expert, their IT expert, and others. And now we have like a reporting pack. The things go from one system to another, some macros get run, and then the final reports get prepared. So there is a very specialized or niche area. You have to just raise a hand to help your partner, means you should have an expertise on everything. Then there are a lot of things I can see businesses are directly contacting outsourcing people, not through accountants, but directly as well. Accounts payables, we call it creditors, and receivables are debtors. So it's pretty much when the money is coming in or money is getting paid, you have to reconcile that with the system, because sometimes there are some bank charges involved or the amounts are not matching 100%, although there is some automation in place or auto feed in place. So someone need to look into those things manually. And the last area which I can see a lot of scope is litigation and audits. So whenever there is any litigation with either tax office or any other body, they ask about a lot of historical information. So some of the historical information is in your system. Some of them you have to go to various logins and download from there. But compilation of that task or that data is a big task. So that's something you guys can consider, because ultimately someone else will review before it gets lodged. In audits, I am exploring that area as well in financial audits. Although the audits process is a little bit different, but the fundamentals are same. So what I have done, some parts of the audit we have given to our outsourced partners. For example, financial statements. So we have our own proprietary tool. So I have trained that my staff member overseas in that tool. So that staff member is now proficient to do that financial statement. So whenever we start any job, straight away the financial statements goes to that person, not helping my team to concentrate on the field work and other dedicated areas, but also means the things get done simultaneously. I have an extra resource. And I think one more thing I would like to put here as well is there is a scalability. So if we need more resources, you don't have to wait for months and months. You just give even weeks notice is enough for your partner, and then they organize resources for you. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Now, some challenges and solution. So obviously, whenever this word outsourcing comes in, people start worrying about, where is my information going? How someone can steal this information? How someone can use this information? Half of the people don't know all our banks, especially big four banks I know, they have their processing centers in India. So if I'm applying for any loan, my tax return, my bank statement, my driving license, my passport, everything is going away. And no one bother about that because everyone has accepted that. On accounting, it's taking time, but slowly, one is need because we are short of accountants here. And another one is adaptability. People are slowly adopting. And I've seen one trend here that people are adopting through middlemen. Let's say if I'm using someone in India or somewhere else, they don't want to deal directly, but they want to deal with me, and I have a resources overseas, and I can liaise with them. So that I have seen happening a lot. So small practitioners are just going to some kind of a middleman or some kind of a practice who's already using overseas resource, and they are comfortable using them. So the challenges are obviously over here, government regulations. Government is very strict on the privacy law, and we have to follow all the standards. We have to do all the proper disclosures wherever we need to do. And recently, a lot of our clients, means if they are European clients, they have now GDPR requirements. It's more like a privacy requirements. And some other multinational clients also asking us to have our data audit. So we are intending to get ISO 27001. So government regulations, we have to keep an eye all the times. Local resources, no, we don't have much local resources. That's why we are exploring towards the outsourcing. Another thing which I have faced as a challenge in the beginning is interpersonal skills of outsourced people. So sometimes it takes time for them to understand the culture, understand the way of dealing. As Martin said, don't be shy saying no, because what I have seen, they have a tendency of saying yes. So if I'm sending some job, they will say, oh, yes, sir, you will get tomorrow. And tomorrow morning, if it's not in my inbox, tomorrow means tomorrow morning, not tomorrow evening, you know what I mean? So that's another challenge I have seen. Like, you need to be very open in the communication. If you can't do, you just tell to your provider or vendor, and they can just go back to the client and just do that. Technical knowledge is another area. For example, now you know that audit, accounting, and everything is changing pretty much every day. So technical knowledge, how the outsourcing people keep their staff up to date on technical aspect, either it's technology or it's core technical or a subject matter. That's very important. When I say technology, they need to be on top of these softwares whichever are used widely in Australia. For example, for our SMSF, we use product called Class. So you can get the Class training on online modules or online resources. Similar way, there is a Xero product called Xero, Xero. So that's again cloud-based accounting. It's as popular as Tally in India, but you can get the certification while you are in India. So you get upper hand on that you know the software and you have passed that certification. So for my team, in my in-house as well as my outsourced team, all are Xero certified advisors. So one of the requirement was you have to pass this certificate, and I helped them, educated them, and now they know. So another challenge is data sharing and storage. As I said, means a lot of Australian accounting practices are a little bit skeptical of giving access to their database. So they start preparing like a sections and give access of those sections to the outsourcing people. So in that sense, it's just a matter of getting confidence, their confidence. And we started with the virtual private network, for example. So in our server, we split the server and we gave some part of that server to our outsourcing team. So we keep the files there, they work on there, and then we remove the files and put, it means in the main server. We stress a lot on webinars and in-house training. So we just treat outsourcing people as one team. So it's not like if I'm running a training or I have some kind of a requirement for my staff, outsourcing people don't need to do that. On all the webinars, on all the trainings, they are also required to sit on those trainings. And after those trainings, sometimes we give them a task which is directly related with that training, just to make sure they have grasped that properly. And if they have any question, we can work on that. We have very frequent meetings with them. That's very important. So you can't rely upon the emails just to send the information and then assume the person will know, because the last thing you want someone is stop thinking and just copy the work papers from last period or last year. We don't want that. So if we allocate any job to any team member, we usually have a 10-15 minutes chat with them, just explaining them what the job is, explaining them the last year file, and telling them some resources to look at. Australia have a lot of resources online available. If you go to tax office website, Australian tax office website, atu.gov.au, so there's a lot of information there. If you go to CPA Australia website, there's a lot of information there. So if you go to public domain, there's heaps and heaps of information. Even we have a library for our resources to go there and check about previous sessions or previous webinars or previous notes. So that's how you can overcome those challenges. Next slide, please.
That's it?
Yep.
Fantastic. Thank you, Harish. That was actually tremendous. A lot of information was covered there. That was comprehensive. I'm just going, I've got some questions, but I'd like to sort of pass any comments to anyone in the panel, please.
I have one for you, Harish. You talked a lot about outsourcing. Are you involved, or to what degree are you involved in insourcing, going into that?
Thanks, Mari. It's a good question. It means when you start any outsourcing business, let's say you're sitting in India, you always need some kind of a local resource or guidance who can keep you up to date on those day-to-day changes, or if you want a second opinion, at least you have a local expert sitting over there. In addition to outsourcing, we have a lot of insourcing. So we work as consultant for a lot of chartered accountancy firms in India who are either involved in outsourcing or who are looking after big groups. In my first slide, I mentioned significant global entity. Just for your information, significant global entity means any entity or company or group whose turnover is more than $1 billion. So we have a lot of SGE, means $1 billion companies, and a lot of multinational companies from India. So this chartered accountancy firm, they look after their global account, right? So when they look after their global account, which includes Australia, they use as a resource for Australian operations. So in the background, we are their in-source. So they have given all the Australian work to us, but they deal with the client, they talk with us. And similar way, I have one solicitor from Netherlands. So it's a similar model. So they use us as their in-source partner. We do all the compliance. We support them on any technical issues or compliance. There's another one. It's a big software development company in India, and they have a lot of big multinational companies. It's a payroll provider company, including Australia. So when they're developing their software, obviously they need some kind of a local guidance on tax and other compliance matters. And obviously they have insourced that work to us as well.
Thank you for that, Martin, for that question. Thank you, Harish. there's a lot you've covered here around, for example, technology, around data and privacy, around upskilling. And I imagine, as you said, that there's a lot of, I guess, training and upskilling that Indian firms have to do before they can actually be outsourcers to Australian firms or Australian corporates. What's the best way that they can actually go about preparing themselves?
I think the best way is things like, as Leslie mentioned, there are some scope doing some kind of a professional training or professional course, because these kind of trainings, we will just give training on specific topics which are relevant to our practice. But if they go for any global qualification like CPA, it's wider in scope, not only a couple of topics which are relevant to us, they will get more exposure or like a more formalized and systematic learning of the things.
That's very good advice. So, and I might actually pass it then to Leslie as well. So what you're saying here is that one way is going about, going to websites, doing training on different technologies, but actually formalizing the training through going through, for example, CPA Australia, and then the public practice as well that Leslie talked about, would actually help you to prepare and formalize as well. I have one component of that is that, is there a difference between someone who is not CPA qualified, living in India, and someone who is? Would that make much of a difference in terms of the outsourcing, who you look for?
See, if there is one or two technical team members there, we don't mind who's doing the work at the end of the day, because all the outsourcing firms have very strict quality control in-house procedures in place. So if we know that one or two people are there who are either locally trained or locally qualified, that was another factor I was considering when I was outsourcing. So I was very keen, whoever I will give the job, at least one or two members, number one, have already done some of the Australian clients, so we are not the guinea pig, and have kind of a formal training or qualification in place. So in that sense, you don't have to spend too much resources, because they understand the basic or up to what level we have to go in compliance, So we can't leave compliance, or we can't leave the things like half cooked, So it's coming to me and I'm giving them back and they are fixing. So if there is someone local trained or local qualified, they know up to what extent the job expectation is, because first few months are very crucial. I can tell you, it can break or make. Even some providers say, oh, we will work with you, we will do these things free for you, you can train us. Short answer is no. You can go to one, you can go to 100 firms, everyone will say no, because no one has time. That's the shortage. That's what we are talking here. We don't have resources, we don't have staff to train someone, even if it's for free, because that productive time is going in training, and there is no means surety on the results.
So what you're saying there also then is that while pricing is important, and the cost differential is important, obviously, with outsourcing, actually quality and the competency is also actually equally, if not more important.
Absolutely.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Harish, for a very comprehensive session there. Does anyone else have any comments in the panel that they'd like to add before I move to Prasoon?
Yeah, I just have one question to Harish. I think, Harish, you brought up a very good point on the security of the data. And, probably you can share some like how strict, and how the landscapes are different, because in Australia, we host a lot on privacy law and privacy data. And I'm glad you touched on the Europe, because Europe format is actually being considered now in Australia. But in India, things are slightly different, where you can find a whole dictionary about CA's names and details, things like that. Maybe you want to share some light on the Australia aspect.
Yeah. So yeah, data security is very important. But to start with, you don't have to spend millions of dollars on your infrastructure and things like that. Some of the short solutions could be you just host some kind of a server in the local country, and that's according to usage. So if you use whatever you use. So that's another option for the members. If they are intending to get overseas clients, they can explore the opportunities of cloud hosting. So we have servers here in Sydney, Melbourne, pretty much everywhere. So that could be one option. Most of the accounting softwares are on cloud, like Xero. So there is no issue about that. Either I'm doing here or I'm doing in India, it's the same security level and no one is first. It's just a matter of how the information is secured, either it's encrypted or not encrypted, who have access. One point which it's very common in India, which I can tell you it's not acceptable in Australia, sharing of logins and passwords. It's very common in India, I know that by heart, but that's not acceptable. If your provider have to buy 10 licenses because there are 10 people working, they will buy it. They will not be shy on it, like saving on that. So that's another thing you need to be very careful. If you're providing services, your provider shouldn't get the hint that it's been shared. If you need more access, just tell them. One is the staff working, we need another access for the supervisor, so the supervisor can review the things. They will give you the access. But if they will come to know there is a sharing of password or sharing of information, that's not seen favorable. And this is the whole game of word of mouth. So you just do one mistake and you suffer a lot. You do 10 good things, you get one, but you do one bad thing, you lose 100.
Very good. Thank you, Harish. Thank you, Leslie. I'll now move it across to our next panelist. So Prasoon will be talking about Carisma Solutions and about their history around outsourcing and what they've been doing. So over to you, Prasoon. Thank you.
Hi, Sandeep. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me today. So, little bit of background about Carisma Solutions. We run an offshore business called Carisma Solutions, and we are based out of in India, and we have offices in Chennai and Bangalore, and we have also got an office in Melbourne. And we have been working with Australian accounting community 15 years now, and we work with 100+ accounting firms at the moment, and we work with a startup firm to large businesses at the moment, and we work exclusively with accounting firms and financial planning firms. We won't directly work with enterprises or corporate businesses. And we have also created a unique working model called 360-degree services and extended team model. It's just like we offer a range of services for accounting firms in Australia, and our team is also an extension of their on-site team. That's what we called as a extended team model. And little bit of background about our company. It is founded by a reputed chartered accountant, and in 2006, he used to run an chartered accountant practice and an advisory business. This is his third business, Carisma Solutions, and yeah, and we have been working with firms from 2006, and we have at the moment we have 260 staff based out of Chennai and Bangalore. Next slide, please. Our services including business services, superannuation, paraplanning, and operation support services, consulting and project, technology solutions and automation. Within each of these portfolio, we have kind of more than 10 activities, and if you take a look at one of the services, we take care of at least 10 activities for accounting firms in Australia. For example, business services, we take care of preparation of annual financial statements and tax return for all entities. We take care of the business activity statement preparation, FBT returns, tax planning. When we look at superannuation, we do year-end finalization of job, online administration of the books of accounts for superannuation clients. And we are also taking care of all the administration services, including the preparation of all the letters for superannuation clients. And we are also taking care of superannuation audit as well. In paraplanning services, we take care of the pre-SOA work, SOA work, and post-SOA work for financial planners in Australia. SOA is a kind of a document. If a financial planner is giving a personal financial advice to retail client, he has to give a formal kind of a document. He has to issue a formal statement of advice to his client. So we take care of preparation of statement of advice for financial planners in Australia. With regards to the operation support services, we look after client bookkeeping, internal accounting, and administration for accounting firms in Australia. So that includes kind of banking management, payroll management, AP and AR management, and all the administration work for a typical chartered accountant firm. Including if they want to kind of like ASIC management, all the registration jobs for accountants like GST, ETF and registration, AB and registration, payroll tax, and other company registration for their clients. We are able to take care of all this administration work from offshore. And we are also able to support their practice management as well. We are able to take care of preparation of engagement letters for their clients, the timesheet management, invoice preparation for their firm. So in operation support services, we look after their practice and internal accounting for their business. When it comes to consulting and projects, we are also taking care of the consulting project for accounting firms in Australia. Like if they want to migrate their kind of a current on-premises software or cloud platform to another platform, we are able to look after those needs for them. And if they want us to prepare any kind of investment pitch for their clients, we are able to do that for them. And in technology solutions and administration, we help them preparation of some software solutions for them based on their need. If they want to automate some of the business process, we are able to take care of that. If they need some kind of software solution support, we are able to meet those requirements for them. Next slide, please. We have also kind of created an accounting center of excellence in our office. So this accounting center of excellence will take care of the preparation of the freshers, training of new employees. We are also building a body of knowledge for accounting firms to be successful. And using this platform, we are able to develop skills, build best practices for accounting firms. And we are also able to create some thought leadership in the offshore industry. So we run training programs for our accountants. We do deep skill training, leadership training program. We conduct special interest kind of groups to learn different aspects of taxation or accounting in Australia. We also develop kind of a checklist for our staff. We ready to use checklist for our staff to review the job, to prepare for the preparation of the job. And we are also able to do the training for accountants, like recent changes in the taxation or industry. we are able to use this platform to do all the training, the learning, and technology development for our business. Yeah. Next slide, please. In terms of security and privacy, we are kind of compliant to Australian privacy policy and the health HPP, health privacy principles. And we are also compliant to notifiable data breach scheme. And our delivery is also certified by ISO 27001. In terms of our infrastructure, we have a firewall and PC hardening to ensure that the client data is secure. So our key focus is to secure data on behalf of our customer. So we use firewall and PC hardening kind of tools to ensure that our system is capable of assembling various security functions to kind of to meet the security standards in Australia. And we are also kind of protecting their client personal information. So we are compliant to the APP, and we have incorporated all these APP and HPP in our contract and in our ISO 27001 framework as well. Next, please. So we are also kind of, we are working with RPA and technology solutions in the area of taxation and accounting. So we help, we develop tools and application for accounting firms. So recently we have developed a mobile app for a mobile tax app for one firm. And we have also developed a risk profiling tool for a financial planner. And we have developed a professional skill database for a national accounting firm in Australia. They have got 10 offices in Australia different. They have got offices in all the capital cities. And we have also developed workflow management software for a financial planning firm. Currently, we are working on an SMSF audit software for our internal team. So we are looking after SMSF audit work for SMSF auditors and accountants in Australia. So we are kind of building a solution for our internal team. In terms of automation, we are also kind of, I can also take you through a case study. We have recently completed a kind of a small app for an accounting firm in Australia. So their client company was in another country, and they were using a different software platform. And their subsidiary company in Australia, they are using Xero. So they need to kind of transfer the financial data to the parent company or format. So we have helped them to create a small app that once we kind of import the Xero report, we will be able to generate a report which we can upload to their parent company system in their format. So initially it was taking 60 minutes for us to do the process. Now I think press of a button we are able to generate that report, and we are able to send it to our client. So that's it. Yeah, I think I have pretty much have covered most of the things. Thanks.
Thank you, Prasoon.
Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Prasoon. That's been very good. And the last slide also was very impressive about how you're using automation to streamline processes and improve operational efficiency. So that's fantastic. And how you're supporting from India, not only on the accounting, but also the accounting firms here around their technology as well. So that's very impressive. I just have a question for you. You've obviously done extremely well. Carisma is no longer what I would call a small to mid-sized accounting outsourcing firm. It actually has scaled, and that's tremendous. Well done. I imagine that most of the WIRC members that are here today, some of them may have also reached that sort of level, but many of them may actually be quite small and medium-sized, and they may be looking at Australia for the first time. What are the top 2 or 3 things that you would sort of recommend to them as an industry leader that they should start looking at when they start looking at Australia?
I would say when we have started with bookkeeping services and SMSF services. So that will be a good start for if anybody is looking for starting an outsourcing business. That will be a good kind of an option for them.
Okay, fantastic. All right, so you're saying start with bookkeeping and self-managed super funds. Okay, fantastic. All right, so thank you for that. All right, so does anyone in the panel have any further questions for Prasoon or any comments? All right, so we've actually got to run a little bit over time. Sorry, does anyone have anything to say?
Sorry, Sandeep. I have one question for Prasoon. Prasoon, you mentioned about ISO 27001, but I have a question where the data is stored for Carisma, or are you using your client system and logging into that and working there? How you are fulfilling that requirement of data security for your clients?
Harish, we use client systems to to work on the job, and we use remote desktop or the VPN network to connect the system, and then we will be working on their jobs, right? So we are not downloading any data in our system, and we are also using Microsoft SharePoint and all licensed version of software. And in that way, we are we are meeting the APP conditions. Harish.
Thanks, Prasoon.
Thanks, Prasoon. Thanks, Harish. I think that covers all the panelists for today. We now will be moving on to the Q&A session. I will pass it back to Dineshji or Mishraji to actually share the questions from the chat. Hopefully everyone have actually, there's some questions that we can talk through. So I'll stop sharing my screen now and let them share the screen. So thank you everyone for all your presentations. Okay, so that's back to us. Thank you, Dinesh.
Mishraji is going to share the questions in just 2 minutes. Just give him 2 minutes.
No problems. We'll give everyone a break.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be.
Here we go. All right. Here we go. Fantastic. So I can see the questions. Thank you, Dineshji and Mr. G, for that. So hopefully the panel can actually see the questions. I will go and actually read them out. And what I will be doing for the benefit of our members is that I will try and get to as many as I can. I think there's about 20 questions there or so. We may run out of time, but I'll be directing them to at least one of the panel members. And once the panel member has provided their answer to the question, open up to everyone else as well. So the first question is, apart from jobs, how can one gain other benefits by becoming a CPA in Australia? So that would be a question for Leslie.
Yep. I think the most important is the global network that you are linking up in the business community. And I like the word that Martin has shared, even outsourcing is not your forte. You could be landed in somewhere, in some companies, they are looking into investing in India, right? And you have the destinations that, to link this up. And by and large, Australian brand is actually quite well received in Asia Pac because of the standards and that Australia as a whole country delivers it. So you could be you could be working or you could be living somewhere, in this part of the world next time when borders open up. I think the benefits of becoming a CPA Australia is give you open doors opportunities, whether you want to be entrepreneur, whether you want to look for another jobs. The other thing I want to say about the benefits that, just what Harish has mentioned, we have a lot of programs and resources to arm yourself to stay ahead. And I was delighted when Harish has mentioned the library. In fact, you as an ASA member, you can access to very expensive subscriptions library resources that you do not need to pay additional. It's included in your membership. And lastly is the letter of good standing. Never underestimates the letter of good standing. I have members from India getting outsourcing opportunities or even landed a job in Singapore by the letter of good standing from both organizations. Yeah, back to you, Sandeep.
Thank you for that, Leslie. I think there's another question for you now, number 2. So I've been a member of ICAI for 2 years. Am I eligible to do a CPA Australia?
Well, I think that if you are fully qualified CAs, we most welcome you to apply, and that applies to any further questions about your individual's assessments. You can always reach out to my team in India. We have shared the contact with the organizers. You can check with the organizers, and I think my team in India is always a regular visitor to WRIC. I think they're familiar with them, and they can pass the information to you.
Okay, fantastic. And are you actually a popular? I think the questions have been prepared in that order. So thank you for that, Dineshji. But the third one also would be for you as well. So please elaborate more on the additional courses to be done after CPA based on Australian company law and taxation. So I'll pass it to you, and then perhaps if anyone else wants to comment as well. So back to you, Leslie.
Sure. If you want to embark to become a public practitioner, I mean, you want to sign off as an auditor in Australia, you need to arm yourself with Australian taxation, and this is one of the subjects that is not required under your MRA, but you can do so if you are deciding to go to the public practice path. But as the fellow panelist has spoken, that if you do not need to become an auditor, you still can get a fair sense of outsourcing work in that space, right? So this is only for those who aspire to become a public practice or open up a public practice firm in Australia or New Zealand. Then you choose to do this subject. CPA Australia do offer Australian taxation as a subject. The other thing is the company law. The company law, you can go to any Australian universities at an undergrad level to do a module on the company law. We can furnish some of our university partners on the company law program for you to consider as well. But first and foremost, you need to become a CPA status. Then after that, you can pursue on this area. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Question 3.
Sorry,
please.
Sandeep,
Go ahead.
Just on what Leslie was saying, I would imagine that any CPD that's undertaken in India would qualify for CPD for CPA as well, and vice versa. So if assuming that's the case, and I'll get Leslie to confirm it, assuming that's the case, then all the studies required for CPA would be very useful in India as well. But to get those qualifications, to get that experience, and to get that cred, if you like, for Australian customers to outsource, it'd be very useful. And you're getting CPD in the meantime.
हेलो
Yes, I totally
हाँ
agree
दृष्टि
with
तो गई नहीं 4:30 बजे उसने मैसेज लिखा है ना दूसरी मीटिंग में चली गई है
Dinesh, if you could just go on mute, that would be great. Thank you. I'll just go on to the third question, which actually I think we've sort of answered, but if anyone else wants to have a go. So please elaborate more on the additional courses to be done after the CPA based on Australian company law and taxation. I think that was covered in some of the discussions we've had, but does anyone want to pick that up very briefly again? Oh, all right, so what I might do, I think that has been answered. I might actually go to the next question, which is question number 4. If you could just go up, please. Yeah, sorry, thanks for that. I'm a CPA from Australia and a CA in India. But to provide tax agent services, we need to register with TPB, and they need a statement of relevant experience of 12 months from a registered tax agent. So how do we get that without being considered a tax agent? We cannot provide any tax-related services to the public in Australia. That's I'd like just to maybe pass it to, would that be Leslie or Harish? Anyone would like to pick that up? Yes, Harish, thank you.
I will take that. Tax agent board is very strict in giving the registered tax office or registered tax agent certifications or registrations. For that, you need to work with one of the tax agents. Then only you can get that certificate. Then only you can get that membership. So for that, the only solution is you have to look for a partner in Australia who can work with you, and while working with you, they can guide you, they can teach you, they can train you, and that certificate or that experience not only can be used for your work, but also can be used to get this registered tax agent certification.
Okay, thank you for that, Harish. That's very useful. The next question I think is going to be a popular one, and I think that is about how do you get interest in firms in Australia who look for an Indian firm for accounting outsourcing. So I'd be interested, I think, Leslie, you had once mentioned about CPA Connect. I'd be interested to know more, maybe if that's relevant. And I know Martin and Harish have talked about the fact that they get emails from Indian firms all the time as well. So I'd be interested to know how they sort of looked at, I guess, selection around that process. And is that the only way that they get to speak to outsourcers? So Leslie, and then maybe Martin or Harish.
Sure. Yeah, I think the panelists have spoke about this topic when we are having our initial meeting. I think first and foremost, I think the Australian culture, which Martin has brought up, is very essential. The Australian is very straightforward, and sometimes perhaps the right word to say is that they don't beat around the bush. Right, but they also a very people person. They would like to engage with you and know who you are. By looking at the email, if you're just spamming the email to all the practice firm in Australia, it won't do you justice, right? First and foremost, you need to get connected with someone and build the relation up. While we are in the virtual world right now, when there's a put a face on the name is always very helpful, right? The CPA Connect allows you to do that because you are a member, you already have a brand behind you, and fellow members also will have a trust and for the first level of engagement. But very much, the other panels you can add on very much also depends on your own personality. The way, how confident you are putting through your experience in being through. Not asking you to brag, but just be very blunt and straightforward at what you can do and what you cannot do, right? So I leave it to my fellow speakers to add on that.
Go ahead, Martin. Thank you, Leslie.
Yeah, I'd support what Leslie said. Putting a face to the name is really important. So, seeing a face, for example, here, we've got 6 or 7 faces on the screen for people to see, and it's not just a talking head, it's not just an email. I would also encourage visits wherever possible. If there's a trade mission or a conference, or perhaps the CPA have events in Australia that you could attend, that's a really good way to meet people. So if you attended, say, a CPA conference in somewhere within Australia on the ground here, you're going to meet many local accountants. You're going to meet many business people. So face-to-face would be absolutely perfect. And, I find the same when visiting India. It doesn't matter how many people you know or how many people you've been referred by or cold calling or sending many emails, you're one of many. But if you're in a room with someone and talking to them and having a cup of tea with someone and talking and chatting and getting to know them, that sort of personal contact is invaluable. So I would encourage face-to-face if at all possible, maybe attending a conference or some other way, even as a tourist, but coming and meeting people is invaluable.
Thank you, Martin. Go ahead, Harish.
Yeah, just want to add one more thing. Yeah, delegation is a good idea, Martin. I appreciate that. There are local chapters of overseas bodies, like we have Melbourne chapter of ICAI, Sydney chapter of ICAI, and you can contact your fellow members here. Means we have around 600 plus members of Melbourne chapter of ICAI, and I was one of the founding members in 2007. 10 of us just sit in the room and we said, let's do something. At that time, there was no memorandum of understanding. So that was the That was the motivation. So the future CAs, they don't have to go through the whole cycle, which we have to, means after doing Indian CA, I have to go through university just to pass 2 subjects, just to be equivalent or graduate equivalent. And then I have to go through the whole CA, Australian CA again. So we thought, okay, that's the challenge, how we can overcome that challenge. Let's get into these discussions with CPAs, CAANZ and ICAI, obviously. And in 2008-9, we invited our president, then president here, vice president here, and that time that MOU was signed. So if you go to your fellow CAs, sometimes this brainstorming can help. They organize, or we organize here, a lot of international events as well, on which you can participate and you can get some kind of a understanding what the market is, what the need is. Someone have just asked one question, I can see in the question answer. Is there any way to approach the industries directly? For sure. So if someone is, working as a CFO somewhere and he has a need, or he has accounting need, yes, you can start with that small part. It's not necessary you have to pick like the whole job or whole accounting or complicated tax matters. No, just come to know what the issue is, what the problem is, and try to give them solution. And you start from there, and then you go, as Prasoon mentioned, they started with a couple of services and then they just keep adding. So it was their initiative plus demand from the clients. So obviously you get the demand, you get expertise in that, and it goes 2 ways.
Thank you, Harish. And what I might do in the interest of time, I won't go through each and every question. Some of them are actually, I think, for example, question 7, maybe we can take up after the session, Leslie, I think, and you can write back regarding that one. It's very specific. A lot of them are about approaching and starting the business, and I think I'd like Prasoon to also talk about this, very quickly as well, because in the pandemic you can't actually go out and face to face, but using your local ICAI chapter, working with CPA Australia as well. Each of the governments, the federal government and the state governments, have offices in India as well. So approaching them and actually asking for their support might be also possible. And the other thing is that the Indian population in Australia is quite large, and so I think approaching through your contacts in India, I'm sure it's not going to be very long before you actually get to be able to speak to someone in Australia who is of Indian origin, and they might be able to support you as well in terms of finding connections as well. So there's that way as well. So I'm just going to go through and have a look at just some more questions. There's question 10 here. Is there a placement portal for Indian CAs who have pursued CPA Australia to apply for jobs? That's an interesting one. I don't know, Leslie, if you've got that.
Yeah, I often got this. Unfortunately, no, we do not have a placement channel. This is also a bit of Australian culture. You need to know that, the Australian culture is very independent, right? We look at candidates to be resourceful. We provide platform like networking opportunities, but they have to engage as well. So there's a lot of you will find there's a change in the aspect from a hand-holding to self-help. So there's a requirement a lot on self-help, but we have resources like just now I mentioned, career insights, where if you want to go to different career, different job scope, like forensic accountants or tax agents, you can always write on this platform, see what's the latest, because this platform we collate the latest job advertisement from the employer, what are the requirements. And we also map to our CPD, or you call it CPE, how do you enhance your learning from there, where Harish say that in a form of structured learning to get yourself prepared, because the employer will not train you, right? So yeah, we don't have that kind of placement, but we have other resources to support you to sharpen your skills towards the direction you're going at.
Thank you for that. The other questions, number 11, 12, and 13, I think we've sort of covered in some of our presentations. But everyone feel free that if you wish to approach the team and the panelists, post the session for any questions. I'm sure they'll be able to assist you with that. The question number 15, Prasoon, this is one for you. It appears you're having technology team to develop apps, etc. Can you explain, has technology given you an edge in getting outsourcing work?
Yes, we have got a small technology team, and that definitely helping us to get some edge over competition. So we have a kind of a team who is looking after robotic process automation and building some technology solutions for the firms. So we look at the business processes and high volume transactions and routine processes, and we will help our clients to automate the process using RPA solutions. And based on the client needs, we are able to kind of give that support from our side. Yeah.
Fantastic, Prasoon. Thank you for that. I'm going to go jump to question 17. I think there's one there, 16 for you, Leslie, as well, but we'll come back to that. This one is for Harish. So Harish, having no experience of Australian accounting of any kind, what should be my approach to get Australian bookkeeping work? And I think that's relevant because Prasoon did mention that, and I think you also mentioned, Harish, that bookkeeping and SMSF would be the, the starting points for outsourcing. So Harish?
Yeah. So bookkeeping and out means bookkeeping is basic level. It's the starting point. But when we say bookkeeping, there are some sections you can start with. If it's a big company, they can outsource a part of that. Either it's creditors or debtors. We call it accounts payable or accounts receivable, because that alone is a job. So we have a job of accounts payable in Australia, which is looking after creditors basically. There is a job of accounts receivable who's looking after only debtors. There is a job of person who's doing the bank reconciliation. So if someone is expert in banking, means they can look for those areas and just target on those areas. I'm not sure how open is Prasoon's firm, but maybe some kind of approach, some kind of a firm who can subcontract some of the work, which is very basic level, and in that sense you can get some training and appreciation as well.
Thank you, Harish. Prasoon, do you want to add anything to that?
So yeah, that is the right maybe kind of start if they can look into the work like bookkeeping, right? It's an online based. Most of our clients are using online based systems, and many of other countries are also using same system like Xero and MIOB kind of system. So it will be easy for our kind of chartered accountant community to learn the software, and they can also learn the basics of the bookkeeping, right, from the CA Institute, and they will be able to kickstart that process.
Thank you, Prasoon. Very good. I'm just going to go to the last question before we go back to closing remarks. And again, a fantastic lot of questions, and hopefully we tried to answer some of them during the presentations. This one is going to be you for you, Martin. So it says all the big fours, and the reason I'm pointing to you is because I know you've worked for one of the big four. So all the big fours have global delivery centers in India to execute outsourced work. Do you see smaller firms too joining in on the trend to optimize costs, and how can Indian firms approach them for the same?
Yes, look, previously it was the domain of the bigger firms, and experience of my firm has been exactly that there is a benefit in outsourcing, even if with only 1 or 2 seats in India. And so the experience of using someone like Carisma or somebody else as an outsourced firm for small firms is absolutely an opportunity. So, and in fact, in many ways, using the smaller firms as a target could be a much better opportunity. Because if you imagine a small firm with 10 or 20 or 30 staff, for them to add even 1 staff member is a big increase in the percentage of staff required. Maybe that's not so big for the Indian CA firms who may have 2, 3, 4, 10 times as many staff. So if you've got 10 staff on board and you're thinking of going to number 11, or you've got 5 staff on board and you think of going to number 6, that's a big percentage increase. So using an outsourced facility where the costs are perhaps lower and they're ready to go and they're trained and they're available, plus they're scalable and probably cheaper, plus the time difference and all the other advantages we've talked about. So a small firm would absolutely benefit from having an outsourced person in India, and I think they should be targeted. How you meet them? Well, that's a good question. As I said, perhaps going to conferences and reaching out to friends. As I said, there's 700,000 people of Indian extraction in Australia, speak to them first and say, do you know anybody? Reach out.
My experience is, Martin, means once you train one person, trained well, so that person can then train other team members as well. And then slowly you are delegating that to next person to next person. So that really helps.
Very good. Leslie?
Yeah, I just want to add on that. I think not only just the firms, the small, medium practitioner firms in Australia, look at the SME space as well. Of course, the firms could be a good ambassador connected, but look at the SME. And I'm very keen to reach out to Prasoon after this talk, because your APP is the way to go. Your apps combine accounting knowledge, is going to be the far riches, not only just in Australia's soil, but anywhere. So there's a context on this, is looking at how can you provide value add services and solutions. So I think that APP is a blend of using your knowledge, accounting knowledge, and the current technology platform to provide a solution to solve the client needs. I think this is what the juice of this webinar. I hope that the key takeaway, not so much about becoming a CPA Australia members, but how will you position yourself to get ahead and provide to solve client needs and find a business out of it. Yeah.
Very well said, Leslie. And any closing comments from anyone before I head and give it back to Dinesh and to Manishji?
I've got one comment, and that is to not be shy. Please do reach out, ask questions, make contact with people, use LinkedIn, use the CPAs, use your friends in Australia. Please do reach out and talk to people, and eventually you'll get there. Getting a leg in the door is very difficult. Getting started is difficult, but you will enjoy the process.
Thank you for that, Martin. And that concludes. I'll now pass it back to the conveners, to the WIRC. Thank you to all my panelists for today's presentations and Q&A. So I'll pass it back to you, Dineshji, and everyone else for the closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandeep, for this excellent moderation, and I really thank Leslie, Mr. Martin, Mr. Harish, Mr. Prasoon, Dineshji for putting all this together, and the excellent deliberation that we had today. I request Arpit Kabra, my regional council colleague and secretary WIRC, to propose a well-deserved formal vote of thanks.
Thank you, Drishti madam. Thank you, Drishti madam. And well, I think the last comments that came in for the SME sector, I think that really was the piece of the entire highlight of this entire event, and very well conducted, very well put up, and and Harishji, we've heard you before. Vimal Gehlotji is there from Melbourne chapter. We've heard him a lot, and the kind of work that you've been doing for all of us, I think, and creating that awareness, I think that really is really helpful. And Martin, the last, as you said, reach out, LinkedIn, and connect and ask the questions. I think that is the bottom line of how you can effectively network and you can grow beyond this boundary. Leslie, thank you for creating these wonderful conversations. You've given strong input for all of us, and I'm sure with the CPA chapter, we could really do really well. And when you see so many firms in Australia looking out for assistance from India, I think that's the best that Indian firms can take advantage of. Prasoonji, thank you very much for providing these technical inputs, I would say, for all of us. And the entire show, Sandeepji, the way you have knitted it well and the way you have moderated it, it's amazing. You made it so relevant and you made it so very calming for all of us, so that we could understand each and every aspect. So I think wonderful. May I request all of you to please put your hands together for the entire panel here. And Dineshji, once again, a wonderful job done for bringing all of these people on this platform. And I'm sure all of us, everyone today, the participant, I mean, really, they would have got a lot of value. And very soon you'll find LinkedIn connects and requests very soon from many of us. And we just hope more and more people empower themselves and try and reach out, and very, as we say, down under. So we will start working around, or we'll start serving down under. So hoping for that, and many more interactions. Harish, we will reach out to you once again It was wonderful again. Thank you for creating this wonderful session and inviting chartered accountants to the CA Melbourne chapter, one of the most active chapters. With these words, really thank you once again from all of us here in India. It's been quite late. Thank you for staying that late, and thank you for making sure that this session really becomes a huge success for all of us. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Arpit. Thank you very much on behalf of everyone.
All right. See you.
Okay. Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone.
मित्रा जी प्रोग्राम क्लोज करो.
Bye, everyone.
Bye bye.